Hi, everybody. I will give it just a minute to let everybody filter in before we get started. Please make sure you are seeing the chat. There's some information in there for you. As soon as the number stops climbing, I'll get started. So, not a bad thing. All right, guys. As we all know, thank you for joining Family Matters Parent Training and Information Center for our webinar this evening. Family Matters serves as one of the two parent training and information centers that serves the state of Illinois. Parent centers are a regulation of IDEA, the special education law that serves our students in the United States of America. Every state has to have at least one parent training and information center, and we work with students aged 0 to 26. We often refer to students as self-advocates, so you may hear that verbiage during the presentation. We also use the term parents loosely. We know that all families look different, and some parents may also be caregivers, grandparents, foster parents, aunts and uncles, and family. So please remember that as we speak about parents and self-advocates. Our job is to partner with professionals and parents as well as self-advocates to help them understand their role in special education. Remember that Family Matters PTIC is unable to offer CEU credit for this training today. Uh, Certificates of attendance can be requested by emailing me after the presentation. We are not a legal service. We do not provide legal representation in any way. We are partially funded under the U.S. Department of Education. However, the contents of today's presentation don't necessarily represent the policies of the U.S. Department of Education, and you should not assume endorsement from the U.S. Department from the federal government. The webinar today is being recorded, and the recording will be available on the Family Matters website following the presentation. At this time, please use the chat box to insert your name and title. So for me, I would say Abby Mars. I am a professional and a parent. Use the Q&A box for your questions solely. Please don't put them in the chat box. They get lost very easily in the chat, and I can't address them at the end of the presentation. We will be taking questions at the end of the presentation today, so make sure you're writing them down or putting them in the Q&A box. Make sure you help us by completing a brief survey after the presentation and that you will receive as you exit. And again, a copy of the presentation will be available after today's presentation along with a copy of the PowerPoint slides. Family Matters is an educational advocacy helpline. We also hold the state's training part of their ESP or Educational Surrogate Parent Program. We help train individuals in the state to become advocates for students who are within the care of DCFS. We also offer a yearly Compass program, which is getting ready to start in January, so watch for an email about that. We do a DAISY data collection program, a special education and advocacy training like today's. We offer two self-advocate vlogs that are posted on our website and YouTube channel monthly. We also have a newsletter and transition-related news blast, and we have a monthly podcast. That's myself and Carrie. We're the two educational support coaches that serve Family Matters full time. Carrie will also be hanging out in the chat to help facilitate with any questions. Remember, please put your questions related to the presentation in the Q&A box. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing my screen at this time. So welcome today. It's Sergeant Bjes, correct? Yes.
Yeah, so retired now.
Retired. That's right. That's what I meant to put in front of that. Retired. Yes. So,
Yes.
thank you so much for coming back again this year. You were on with us last April. Was it April?
Was it?
Maybe. It may be last December. I don't remember. But you were on with us last
Yes.
year, and you did such a wonderful job and brought so much life-saving information to parents and self-advocates that watched the presentation. We just had to have you back this year. So we're so excited for you to come back. So with that, I'm going to mute myself, and please let me know if you need anything at all.
Appreciate it. So thank you for having me on again. Yeah, I think it was last year, December. I believe I was on last time. So for those who weren't on with me last year, my name is Stefan Bjes. I am a retired sergeant from the Addison Police Department, which is it's a western suburb of the city of Chicago. So I spent 21 years there. I did a little bit of everything in my career, 5 years in patrol, 10 years in our gang unit, 3 years as a school resource officer, and I retired as a patrol sergeant after getting promoted after about 6 years. I am currently the assistant director of campus safety at North Central College in downtown Naperville. I've been there. January will be 3 years I've been there. But on top of that, I'm also a special needs parent. I have two sons with autism. My middle son is 15 and my youngest is 13. Both of them were diagnosed in 2000 and wow, 2009 already. No, 2013. 2013, they were both diagnosed. Um, and it's really them that have motivated me to kind of do these trainings across the state of Illinois. I still train law enforcement on a very regular basis. Great news for all of us special needs parents is come January 1st, 2025, every law enforcement officer in the state of Illinois must have autism training within 2 years of that law going into effect. So kudos to our elected officials and our governor for signing that law and making that mandate for law enforcement across the board. There are many agencies that have already sought out this training relating to autism, but now every police officer in the state of Illinois will now have to have this training. So I've been training law enforcement for about 10 years. I've trained over 5,000 first responders. So I have a feeling my phone's going to start ringing quite a bit in the next year or two as agencies are looking to get this training for their officers as well. But what we're going to talk about tonight's a little bit different. We're going to talk about it from a parent's perspective. We're also going to talk about how we can be advocates for our kids as especially particularly with law enforcement and how we can advocate for them as well. So let me share the screen. So I always start off all my presentations with a why. And this letter came into my chief of police probably about 8, 9 years ago. And it was from a concerned parent that lived in my town that I worked in Addison. And in summary, what the letter says is he, as a father, had his concerns if he had to contact our agency for assistance with his son. Now, his son was one of my students when I was a school resource officer. I knew his son very, very well. His son is now 22 years of age, but he's also 5'9", 220 pounds, and has a limited verbal capacity, meaning he can't tell you when something's going on. And he has the propensity to become aggressive when he goes into a meltdown. So I knew reading this email when it was sent to me from my chief that there were instances where my officers, the ones I was supervising, might respond to this residence for assistance with this parent and their son. And I wasn't really sure if the officers that I supervise as their sergeant would understand this young man's disability, and which really my motivation of why I started training law enforcement and obviously my own two sons as well. So I put this class together. I did it for my own department. And then another department called, then another department called, then another department called. And as it sits right now, I'm training law enforcement agencies across the state of Illinois and actually all over the country, though, a little bit, 3 to 4 times a month. I congratulate those agencies that are seeking out this training, but there's still a lot of agencies across the state that are not. And we know with our loved one's disability that a lot of times those characteristics of the disability can be misconstrued as different things like they're uncooperative or aggressive or evasive. And it's not the case. It's characteristics of their disability and not necessarily them being uncooperative with that law enforcement professional. Going into that, we know what our impairments, especially with some specific intellectual and developmental disabilities, that there are those major impairments, right? It's that socialization, that lack of social skills. Behavior is one of those things. A lot of times, our loved ones will display those restrictive or repetitive mannerisms, also known as stimming. For any of us special needs parents, we all know what stimming is. My boys stim consistently all day long. Like if they're awake, they're stimming, right? And their stimming, it varies between both of them, whether it's some physical stimming, but also a lot of vocalizations, a lot of echolalia and things like that. And communication, we know that a lot of our loved ones will suffer from that area where they can't verbally communicate what's going on. And I always stress to law enforcement, it's not just because we're nonverbal doesn't mean we can't communicate. We just have to do it in a different way. And as are the strategies that I'm trying to teach our first responders is that communication can be in a lot of different fashions. We just have to be open to using different resources to be able to communicate. But all individuals with ASD, regardless of level of functioning, will have these three areas. We know that. And I explain as we do this training is that it will be vary from person to person to person. I always say it all the time. If you know one person with autism, well, guess what? You know one person with autism because the person next to them maybe display different characteristics or different variations or different intensities. My two boys have the same diagnosis, but they're very different from each other. And I always use those examples with my own two sons. What we also stress is that every behavior has a function, right? There are functions of behavior. Um, so we're obviously, and I explain when we do this training is that there is a function for the behavior that you're seeing. It's just our job, our role is to understand what that behavior is. We understand what the function of the behavior is. We know how to stop a problematic behavior. So first thing is want, right? We want something. The second one is escape. We're trying to escape out of an unpleasant situation. My youngest son is a big escaper. If it's overwhelming, too loud, too crowded, too whatever it is, he's like, I'm see you later. I'm out of here. Um, there's that physical or sensory, right? And what I explain is that there people with a disability experience their environment differently than those that are neurotypical, right? They may be sensitive to light, sound, touch, taste, things like that. And then obviously a social need, right? That social aspect, but we know that's an area that's also affected with our loved one's disability. So we must replace that behavior with some kind of function. So if we understand what the cause of the behavior is, we know how to work through a crisis situation, which is typically when law enforcement is being contacted, because it's our two most common calls for service that we would get from a law enforcement perspective with somebody with a disability is self-stimulating or aggressive behavior to themselves or others. And then obviously wandering elopement events. And we're going to talk at length about wandering and elopement events because my youngest son is an active eloper. But disabilities, ASD in the criminal justice system. And research shows that prevalence of only 1% of the population has autism, but they're 7 times more likely to be the victim of a crime. So it's not just our loved ones being identified as potentially their behaviors being criminal, but also the victimization rates is significantly higher. And another area that I've been starting to work into a little bit more is working with our child advocacy centers, especially up here in the northern part of the state, King County, DuPage County specifically, where they're seeing an increase in victimization where our loved ones with disabilities are becoming the victims of abuse or neglect. So I started working with those CAC agencies a little bit. I'm actually presenting in March for their Illinois CAC conference up here in Schaumburg, covering all those CAC centers across the state. But we know those victimization rates are significantly higher, right? And this is where we play a role as parents is how do we stop our loved ones from being the victimization of crime? And we're going to talk about different ways we're going to do that. Okay. Autism and age. Now, my boys are starting to get a little bit older. They're 15 and 13. So as children with a disability grow older, those attitudes start to shift a little bit. So when we have our children with disabilities, when they have a problem behavior, it's seen as a manifestation of the disability, right? But as they grow into adulthood, that attitude starts to shift a little bit. So if we're observing an aggressive or behavior towards others, for the child, it's one thing, but as an adult or a young teen, now that becomes a crime or it becomes a battery or assault. Pocketing preferred items is one of those things. My youngest son, if he wanted something, he just took it. Um, but as a child, it's one thing, but now as an adult, that becomes a theft or a retail theft. Um, Another aspect of that too is understanding that our loved ones, their bodies will mature one way, but their minds may not mature the same way. So if you have a 25-year-old individual with a disability who's playing in a park with other kids, but it looks like a grown adult male, those are calls that we get on a regular basis. In my own jurisdiction where I worked, we had a call for service of a 40-year-old man with autism, severe, a level 3, and he loved to watch the water in the pool, in the public pool. But the problem is when there were kids in the pool, parents started to freak out. Our agency was contacted, and our park district said we want to ban from the property. And we had to actually ban him from the property because parents felt uncomfortable with this 40-year-old man staring at their children. It was not the case, but we kind of didn't have a choice in that instance. So, and the other place we're starting to see more and more of now is invasion of personal space, and where it becomes more of a stalking related behavior. Now, working on a college campus, I see this quite a bit. And I don't know what our exact numbers are for this year, but last year at my college where I work at North Central, we had 34 students with autism on campus. Not all of those students received services, but a vast majority of them did. And I started to see a trend where um, maybe intellectually those individuals were on par with their fellow students, but maybe socially they were not. And nobody had ever worked with them in those social skills, how to build relationships or build friendships, but things like that. And now you're putting them in this college type setting. So um, I had 3 or 4 of these last year where reports were submitted to us as campus safeties that of a stalking behavior, and it's not. It was really a characteristic of disability. And I had one very early at the start of this year as well. A young man who was a freshman and was just trying to make friends, but struggled with it because nobody had ever really worked with him socially and that social aspect. And he made some of his fellow classmates uncomfortable, and we had 4 different incidents where we actually had to issue a no contact order between him and those individuals. And it wasn't really stalking behavior. It was he just didn't understand, didn't have those social skills that he should have had coming into it. So this is where we think a lot of the behaviors that our loved ones' disabilities gets misconstrued as a crime, and this is how law enforcement does get um, involved with that. Okay, that emotional regulation component, right? Difficulty assessing relative danger. My youngest son has no concept of danger. He understands fear, but he doesn't understand what's a dangerous situation. And this becomes a significant problem because a lot of times our loved ones will put themselves in dangerous situations. And this is where, again, our role as parents is teaching some of those skills of what's a dangerous situation, what's not, but also putting some safety measures in place. And we'll talk about ways we do that. Low tolerance for frustration, fear, anxiety, sadness. Um, I always say my youngest son goes from 0 to 100. There is really no in between with him. He becomes overwhelmed and he can get loud, he can get aggressive. Property destruction is common with him. We just had an incident yesterday with him in school, and it was just his substitute teacher wasn't doing something the way he wanted it to. And he had a pretty good meltdown that lasted about 10 minutes, which was wonderful. It was only 10 minutes. Some of the previous ones have been over an hour, but um, understanding that they may lose control because of that, because they don't have those same skills to kind of regulate those emotions in the same way. And I always stress for law enforcement as well is that with that emotional regulation component, you may see opposite motions from what you may see, right? You may get no response from something that's very, very serious, but have an individual laughing or smiling during something that's very, very serious. I explain to law enforcement and first responders, don't expect that the emotions are going to match the typical situation that you're going to see. Um, and understanding that, or you may get no emotion whatsoever. You may get a flat affect face as well. So may not be able to communicate with others again. Communication is sometimes a struggle, but just because we're nonverbal doesn't mean we can't communicate in the same way or fashion. Okay, so explaining and having different resources available to be able to have that communication component is critical. And they may resort to dangerous strategies. Again, my youngest son has no concept of consequences, right? So he'll use confrontational language. We see a lot of swearing instead of some things that come out of his mouth that shouldn't come out of a 13-year-old's mouth, but it does. But you also see that withdrawal or wandering, and I said escape behavior. We're trying to get out of that uncomfortable situation. So, what safety measures can we put in place? And then physical contact or self-injurious behavior, right? Understanding during a meltdown situation that our loved ones may resort to um, self-injurious behavior or physical aggression towards others. And it's not in the same fashion where it could be misconstrued as a crime, but it could not be as well. So understanding that and giving them that space and time is very, very critical. In the home, things that we can do. Again, I said it before, my youngest son has no concept of danger. He understands fear and he knows what he's afraid of, but really doesn't have a concept of what is a dangerous situation. So just things to think about in our own homes that we can do and put things in place. Our in our kitchens, our stoves, our knives, sharp objects, things like that, second story windows. I will tell you, we had a spurt with my youngest son with some elopement issues, and he actually tried to climb out his second story window, not understanding that it's a pretty steep fall. He just didn't care. He was motivated to get to his preferred goal. I'll explain what that was as we get a little deeper into this. Strangers at the door are another thing that's huge. My youngest son would actually, both of my boys for that matter, would, if the doorbell rang, they would just open it, not understanding that it's not always a family member or a loved one or a trusted individual coming over. It could be an Amazon driver coming in and just opening that door, or one of those things. Phone and internet usage is another big thing that we're starting to see more and more and more of. And this is where we have to play our role as parents is monitoring what is happening online. Number one, for the fact of our our loved ones are easily solicited by somebody online to actually meet up or share important personal information. And having some parameters put on um, iPad, computer, phone usage is really, really critical. Another area that I'm starting to see more and more of is our loved ones getting in trouble via the internet or online by doing um, either interacting with somebody who may be considered underage and or downloading of child pornography is the one we see a common occurrence with. Um, and I'm not the expert in teaching sexuality for our loved ones. We'll talk a little bit more about it, but I will definitely provide everybody resources of great places to look for those resources because, um, again, our social media world, our online world has opened up where, again, not understanding those consequences, we're starting to see more and more of it. I know at least three specific events where young adults with disabilities have solicited, quote unquote, a minor online and actually been pushed into the criminal justice system because they were adults and the person they were soliciting, which turned out to be an undercover police officer, was not. And they were posing as a 15 or 16-year-old girl. Um, really, the rationale in it is that they had more in common with a 15 or 16-year-old due to their mindset, as opposed to their targeting somebody who is a minor. So this is an area that we have to be very, very conscious of as parents. Hygienic issues, communication of pain, fear, and illness. Um, my middle son has a very high pain threshold. This was several years ago. Before he went to school one day, he was running around with our dog, slipped, fell, hit his arm on the floor, cried for about 2 seconds, got up, went to school the whole day. And we didn't realize until he got home that afternoon that he'd actually broken his arm. He never once complained that he was hurt or injured or anything like that. So we understand that that fear concept is not always there. So being conscious of what things could happen with our kids as well. Okay. I'll play this video real quick, and there's no volume to it or audio to it, but I'll kind of share the story on this one. Um, this is August of 2022. For whatever reason, that night, my wife and I woke up at 2:30 in the morning. For whatever reason, again, till this day, I do not know. We wake up and realize my youngest son, his bedroom door is open, his light is on. This is not uncommon for him. He does wake up in the middle of the night pretty regularly, usually just to go to the bathroom. But in this instance, I woke up, went to look for him, and he was not in the bathroom. He was not downstairs. He was not anywhere in our house. We started to get concerned. I pulled up my Ring doorbell, and this is what I see: him walking out my front door at 12:30 at night. So he's now been gone for over 2 hours. Um, Understanding and knowing my background a little bit, I started to freak out a little bit, and I told my wife, "Like, you need to call 911. You need to do it immediately." I immediately got in the car and went. I have a retention pond in my subdivision. It was the first place that I went. Now, I'm lucky enough that I have a law enforcement background. In the area I live in, I had built a pretty good relationship with the surrounding agencies. I actually trained two out of the three agencies that responded that night to my wanted an elopement event with my own son. But one of the sergeants that was working in a neighboring town I've known for years, he heard my son's name and actually called me directly and said, I heard it's your son. Kind of checked in the area. I think it was like 11 minutes between 911 call when they recovered him. He was 2.5 miles from my house. He had crossed a pretty busy road, a set of railroad tracks, and was wandering the neighborhood when somebody who woke up with their dog at 3:30 in the morning had actually saw him and called the police department, and they were already out searching for it. That night, there was three agencies out looking for my son, as well as the fire department for my local jurisdiction. It was actually one of the battalion chiefs from the fire department that actually located my son. The whole different concern is that when that fire battalion chief saw my son, he's like, "Hey," he's like, "Are you Andrew?" He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "Get in the car." And he's like, "Okay." And Andrew just got in the car with him, which is a whole different scary thing that we had to address moving forward because he just got in the car with a complete stranger. But when I located him, when I responded to the scene, I told my son, I'm like, "Where were you going?" And he said, backstory of this, he had just had his first day of junior high. My youngest son is terrified of the fire alarms at school. So when I got to the vehicle where she was sitting with the battalion chief's car, I'm like, "Where were you going?" I was going to Thompson Junior High to break the fire alarms. It's hard to see in the video, but he's got a set of noise canceling headphones and a hammer. So his overwhelming anxiety of the fire alarms with the first couple of weeks of school in a new school drove him to elope in the middle of the night and tried to break into the school. The school is about 5.5 miles from my house. We had a long walk that night. But I will tell you this, he attempted to elope 5 more times over the several months after this initial incident. And I always tell everybody, I laugh. I said, I thought my house was secure before, but now, if we have a fire in the middle of the night, where I said we are all dying together because there is absolutely no way to get out of our house because I have changed every lock, every chime, every window that we owned, putting things in place to make sure that he stays safe and never elopes in the middle of the night like this again. But as a parent, it's a terrifying moment to realize that your loved one with a disability has now wandered off and they've been gone for over 2 hours. Going back in this a little bit more, it's an area that's really, and obviously I'm very passionate about working with our individuals with disabilities. And it's one of the things I had to wait till I retired from law enforcement. But um, if anybody's familiar with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, they have a group called Team Adam. Team Adam is a consultant group. It's comprised of almost all retired law enforcement. There are a handful of other experts that have some different areas of expertise, but vast majority of those who are doing it are law enforcement professionals or retired law enforcement professionals, I should say. And they will respond to any missing child across the country as long as a law enforcement agency calls for assistance. It's one of those things I've always wanted to do. And this past May, I was selected for Team Adam and I went out to Washington, D.C. For my initial training. And I'm one of 3 Team Adam consultants here in the state of Illinois. I will tell you, all 3 of us are up in the northern part of the state. So it's myself, um, Dale Gustafson, who is out of the Oak Forest, Homewood area, and then another individual who's up in the northwest suburbs. So there are only 3 of us, but my area covers into Iowa, Wisconsin. I have a 4-hour radius. So, going to your law enforcement agencies, Team Adam is a free resource. We, as the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, have a lot of resources that law enforcement may not have or may not have to go through the same red tape that law enforcement has to, because when you call and say we're from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, a lot of different opportunities and doors open that law enforcement might have some struggles going to. So part of what I'm doing across the state is also training law enforcement that we as Team Adam or National Center are another resource that is available for families can work with and assist on cases like this. I just got a call today from one of my aunt who lives in Arizona, and they had a 14-year-old boy with autism that wandered off, and he was gone 7 days, and they located him. He lived in Glendale, and they found him in Phoenix. And if anybody's familiar with that valley area in Arizona, that is a significant distance, and he was gone for 7 days. And NECMEC was never called. So it's one of those resources that is underutilized, but we were happy to go out in cases like this. uh, Safety measures in the car, right? Doors and windows. My kids, I'm sure I'm not the only one, but my kids have had some pretty significant meltdowns in the car while we were driving, where we've had to pull over. My youngest one is actually, I tried to get out of the vehicle in the middle of the expressway on several occasions. So having those doors locks and windows locks are critical. Seatbelts during a meltdown in a car, please just pull over to the side of the road. We've had it several times where we had to pull over. We actually had a state trooper pulling behind my wife one day where the boys were having a pretty good meltdown. And the trooper did a great job, just kind of backed off and let her as a parent do her thing. Parking lots are another thing. My youngest son, again, not understanding that concept of fear, keeping him close in those parking lots. Um, but during those meltdowns in the car, please just pull over to the side or pull into a secure area so that it doesn't have a distraction for the general driving. An event of a fire or smoke alarm, overstimulation. There are some great resources out there. If you're looking to replace your smoke detectors, they do have some they'll make that audible signal and it actually voice. A lot of the fire departments up in the northern part of the state are actually utilizing these a little bit more. But rather than having that audible signal, which can be very overwhelming, it is in my house, they have ones that are voice activated, so it's a little bit more understanding, but training for these or preparing for these instances, or if you do have a fire or they're in an area that does have a fire alarm or a smoke detector go off, understanding how your level will respond to that is critical. Um, we have to remember, and I'm training law enforcement, I'm also training fire departments as well. And I just did a fire department where I'm at on the same facts of how to respond to a fire scene, how you're treating medically as well, because it's different animals. two different, very different things in those situations. But our loved ones may seek those safe places. So explaining to firefighters that during a search of a house fire, they will go in, or they'll try to run back in for a preferred item. But it's that fear of resistance to uniform rescuers, right? A lot of times our loved ones are scared of somebody in a uniform. They are unable to differentiate that it's a firefighter versus a police officer. I'm in a different situation. My sons have seen me in uniform their entire lives, so it's not uncommon for them or to see that. But for some of our loved ones, they may not never have. But my youngest son has a fear of firefighters because he associates that with fire alarms. So fire truck, fireman, fire alarm, it's usually not a good combination at all in my house. Okay. And this is another area that I'm starting to get more and more involved in, especially in the safety end of it. And I think this is where we can play a vital role as parents and advocates is safety drills within our schools. Um, all of our schools are required by law to have a lockdown drill, a fire drill, tornado drill, and are expected to do that. I will tell you, my wife is a school teacher, so she practices on a regular basis, but the law states you have to do these. But a lot of times what we're seeing is our loved ones with disabilities are being opted out of these safety drills. And that poses a significant problem because they're ill prepared if there is an emergency within the school. And just recently, and I use this example of one of the more recent school shootings down in Georgia. One of the victims was a 14-year-old boy with autism who froze during the emergency drill and was not secured in an area and was actually one of the victims that was killed during that incident. So, how do we start preparing our schools and our school districts and our school staff to prepare for our loved ones with these disabilities because they need to be parts of these drills, but they have
Just
to
a
be
second,
adjusted
guys.
to meet.
Let's see if his internet comes back on. There you go. You froze for just a second, but you're
Oh,
back.
did I really?
Yep, yep, you're back now. It's fine.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't realize I was freezing up like that. Um, I'm not sure where I froze up, but I was just talking about safety drills for students with disabilities. And this is an area that I'm starting to look at. It was signed into law last year, went in effect in August, where we as parents now can add accommodations for safety drills into our loved ones' IEPs. I will tell you, I brought it up with my school district last year, and they looked at me like I was crazy. And I said, well, it's now the law that you can add those accommodations specifically in safety drills for our students with disabilities. And this is an area that I'm working with a lot of school districts. I just presented on this topic to a school safety group about 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. And I'm actually part of a large study down in Texas. They are doing a mass study out of Sam Houston University, surveying every school district and every law enforcement agency in the state of Texas to see how they're making these accommodations for our loved ones with disabilities, specifically in these safety drills. So as advocates, as parents, one of the things we need to really seek, obviously we know our loved ones' characteristics. So we need to share that information with our school staff so that they're prepared of how our loved ones would handle an emergency situation or these drills. Again, fire drills with my youngest son are traumatic. We tried giving him advance notice saying on Friday, you're going to have a fire drill. But I will tell you that backfired on us. And because his anxiety was so high leading up to that Friday fire drill, it was worse than just surprising him with it. We've got it built in with him that he has an adult with him at all times during that fire drill because he has eloped in the past. So we've got it built in where he does have someone with them at all times because of that. What I'm telling schools to do, and I think this is a great way where we can advocate for our kids as well, is creating specialized kits. Like each student would have their own sensory kit to kind of work through some of the areas of that overwhelming environment that the safety drill could pose. The use of visuals is another thing that we're stressing as well. And then treating them as age appropriate. Uh, so using visuals, age appropriate, but I said preparation for our safety drill starts like the week of the safety drill, not the day of, right? And you're doing those increments in small chunks, um, and you're breaking in manageable tasks. But even then, I'm telling teachers, do it as a game, right? Instead of whatever protocol you're utilizing in your school district, whether it's run, hide, fight, Alice, avoid, deny, defend, the concepts are all the same. You're either running, barricading and hiding or fighting. And obviously our students are not going to be the ones that are going to be that fight portion of it. But if you're evacuating from your building, you make it as a follow the leader or a red light, green light. where you make it a game as opposed to making it some kind of emergency type situation. Our students are much more receptive to it. And this is what I'm explaining to school staffs across the state and on this exact concept of this. Um, there are several laws in place, IDA, all sorts of things in place that are we have to make these accommodations by law. School districts are mandated that they have to make accommodations for our students with disabilities. If you have a loved one with a physical disability, I do not like the area of refuge component. And if you're familiar with what that is someone with a physical disability who uses a wheelchair, walker, whatever, who can't physically go down a set of stairs because elevators won't be operational at that point when a fire alarm goes off. They are left in an area of refuge. And the fire department is told, hey, this individual is there. Right. But we've seen it in the past where our loved ones with a physical disability who can't evacuate the building are forgotten about and left there. Um, Chicago Public Schools had an issue with this a couple of years ago where they left during a drill, left a student in a wheelchair on the third floor, and she was there for almost 2 hours because people forgot that she was up there. Our goal is to not have that happen. So we're talking about different ways you could evacuate our students with a physical disability that could get out of that school, whether it's people carriers, stair chairs, things like that, or other resources that are available. But as parents, we have to advocate for those. And I'm not bashing school by any means, but if anybody's been through those IEP meetings, you know it's like buying a used car. They have their price, you have your price, and hopefully your goal is to meet somewhere in the middle, but it doesn't always go that way because we wouldn't have advocates and due process attorneys and all these other things that we have with our loved ones' IEPs. But this is an area that can be added into an IEP or 504 for that matter as well. Okay? Tasks and breaking them down. Again, if you're preparing either with these safety drills or anything at home and breaking those things down into manageable tasks and the use of visuals. My boys are both very visual learners. So we use a lot of visuals because that's the way they learn. But utilizing practicing real life scenarios and settings and reinforcing that success, right? We're trying to reinforce positive behaviors, not reinforcing the negative, right? Social stories, again, I'm a huge social story advocate because my boys are both very visual learners. There are a lot of resources out there, a lot of school districts utilizing these, but this is a great resource. It's the PA Autism Project, paautism.org. They have hundreds of social stories on there that are at no cost to families, but they're social stories on when it would be appropriate to call 911. What happens if you're on a traffic stop? One of the big things we did was we're traveling for the holidays. Um, we have a social story for what it's like to go through TSA. And if anybody's utilized TSA cares, giving them a heads up that you have a loved one with disability, they will make those accommodations for you as well. But utilizing social stories and knowing where to get them, specifically in our school safety drills, I had visuals for both of my boys, and I've handed them hundreds of them out to school districts across the country, utilizing those visuals for whatever protocol you're using or whatever drill you're practicing or involved with. But it's a great resource that is free. You can go there and kind of pick and choose any social story that you kind of want. They have just to cover just about everything that you could possibly need. But I usually pull the ones that are first responder related, and I usually hand those out to agencies when I'm training them as well. Understanding boundaries, and this is a big one that we're starting to is really, really important for us because, again, not understanding the concept of fear or danger, we need our loved ones to understand what those boundaries are. So in relationship circle, where do they sit? Where do you sit? Where do loved ones, fairy community helpers are things? So setting those boundaries, understanding that. One of the big things that we have always done, and I'm different, but our community helpers, our firefighters, our police officers are there to help. And understanding where those boundaries are is they're trusted individuals, and you can trust a law enforcement or firefighter because they are there to help. My boys are very comfortable with law enforcement, but they come from a law enforcement background, but most families don't. I will tell you that this, as advocates as well, you should be going to your local jurisdictions, your police department, your fire departments, and introducing your loved ones to that group so they know how the individual acts, what makes them, what are some of their strategies for coping strategies, things like that. But getting to know them No police department and no fire department is ever going to turn around to a family and be like, I have a loved one with a special need or a disability, and I would love for your agency or your officers or your firefighters to get to know them ahead of a critical incident. No police department is ever going to turn you away. If they do, let me know, call me, I'll give them a call. Because, like I said, they're mandated to have this training now. But take that initiative and have your first responders get to know your family and where you are. Um, Part of it on a law enforcement perspective is knowing knowledge is half the battle. If we know what we're interacting with or that we're going there to a residence that has a loved one with a special need, we know we have to shift our tactics. We can do these different things. And we'll talk about some of the resources that law enforcement has available to be able to do this. But again, setting those boundaries and understanding what those are very, very critical. It's difficult. Trust me, my youngest son will is like, "Hey, how are you?" Just to a random stranger, but we've taught him what his boundaries are a little bit as well. Okay. Sexuality and ASD or disabilities in general. And again, I am not an expert. I'll give you a website of an individual, Kate McLaughlin, who is phenomenal at this. She is probably one of the best that I have seen on this topic. So I will defer to her, but these are some of the things that I've taken in conversations with her a little bit. But we know with sexuality and our loved ones with disabilities is their body is going to mature the same way it would for somebody who's neurotypical, but um, their mindset may not be the same. Okay. So things that will affect it are the difficulties in an interpersonal relationship, not understanding boundaries, curiosity about sexuality. Again, they're going to mature physically the same way as a neurotypical will, but again, may not have the mindset to match that as well. The impact of socialization, and again, getting those social skills is critical. And I will tell you, I understand it is very difficult, especially when you're getting into teen and early years of social groups. Truthfully, we've had a very, very difficult time finding resources for that social group aspect for teens and young adults. For younger children, they're all over and they're easy to find, but as they start getting older, it's not always necessarily there. Rejection from a peer group is one of the things that I've started to see on a college campus is as those behaviors are witnessed, they're isolated or rejected from a peer group. And that leads into depression, isolation, anxiety, things like that. And the other thing is access to sex education. It's offered in schools, we all know that, but a lot of times our students with disabilities are left out of those conversations, and it hasn't been the necessary accommodations have been made to be able to teach them on this area of this topic. It's very, very important that they have that understanding again what those boundaries are. Okay, inappropriate sexual behavior as they grow into maturity, a lack of sexual knowledge, a confusion about privacy and intimacy. Um, my boys struggle with this, especially my middle son Zach. He just doesn't understand what's not that it's inappropriate or not appropriate, but like he'll get out of the shower and he'll just walk out of the bathroom naked. He's 15 now. We can't really do that. When he was younger, it was one thing, but now he's getting older and we can't really do that. Issues of consent is a huge one. Understanding what means no and what means yes. And in the restricted interest of sexual obsession is one of those things we're starting to see a little bit more too. This leads into a lot of potentially legal issues because of that isolation. If you're, again, access to the internet, limiting those resources, and I will tell you, the first time I heard this, I kind of took a step back, but the more I thought about it, it made perfect sense. So as you're getting a young adult or a teen, as they're maturing, that's that drive, that sexual drive is going to be there no matter what. But understanding what's appropriate or not. And actually, it was somebody who told me instead, if you're going to have them look or view pornography, you have to give them websites that are appropriate, that are safe to do so, because this is where we see a lot of our loved ones with disabilities that are getting either charged or in possessing of child pornography and not understanding that that's what it is. They're just looking for to meet that desire. So actually giving them a list of appropriate websites is they say is the way to go. I was really taken aback the first time I heard it, but the more I thought of it, it actually does make perfect sense. Yeah. We're going to watch this video again and just talking about the victimization with our loved ones with the disabilities. And this is kind of going to go into another topic that we're going to talk about second, but this video was just shared with me 2 days ago, and I thought it was really appropriate for this presentation.
I don't think we have any sound. I don't think we're able to hear the presentation or the video rather. Can you hear me okay? Oh, okay. Unfortunately, we don't have any sound with the video.
Is it not working?
It is not. The video sound is not working. If you go into your shared and like go in on the bottom on share and hit like new share and there's a box over to the right that says share video sound.
No.
So the little box down at the bottom with the arrow that says share. Nope. So keep going down all the way to the Zoom menu down there at the bottom.
Mine's at the top. So let's see.
Oh, yours is
Go
at the
to,
top.
yeah,
Sorry.
new share. Go ahead, go to new share. I'm sorry.
Uh-huh. And then over on the right-hand side there it says share video with sound. And check mark that one. And then try to replay your video and see if that works.
Okay.
I always forget that part when I do presentations.
I'm not a technology guy. I'll tell you that right now. No, not getting into chance to do it.
I think you need to go back one slide all the way in the left-hand bottom corner there. There you go. Oh, yeah, you might need to turn that up a little bit too. The girls at work call me the techie person, and I'm not. I just get aggravated and mess with it until I figure it out.
Yeah, I am not by any means. So let's see if oh, I'm skipping ahead. All right, let's see if this works. Is it working now or no?
I don't hear
Can
any
you hear it now,
sound.
Abby?
I cannot hear any sound. Try turning up the volume on the video itself. Yeah, over there somewhere. Oh, I'm sorry. It's over here by your play button. Sorry, it was blurred. I couldn't see it.
Uh,
All the way in the bottom left-hand corner of your video screen
there
there.
it is.
Okay, now it's off. There we go. Now maybe try it.
All right, let's see. Yes, no?
Nope, I can't hear it at all. Can you hear it?
I can hear it.
Okay. I think it has to do with your screen sharing. But everybody will get a copy of the presentation. They can watch the
Yeah.
video from there. So I know you're really excited to share it. So do you want to tell everybody about it?
Sorry. I'll
No
kind of
worries.
explain this video. It was just this one was just shared with me just a couple of days ago. Um, and what it was is should have worked. Sorry. I'll share what the video was. This video was shared with me a couple of days ago from actually a representative from Angel Sense. And what it was is the young lady in this case, she's actually kidnapped and sexually assaulted, but it's actually her Angel Sense tracking device that allows law enforcement, number one, to track her down, number two, help locate the individual that actually kidnapped her. And I never seen it where Angel Sense had played this role into it, but again, it just plays into the role of our loved ones being victimized. It's really critical that we have different resources available to keep them safe. So I thought it was a good video to kind of share a little bit. I wish I could have figured out the volume. I apologize. Um, Consider identification. This is one of the big things that we see all the time, especially with wandering elopement events. And it's really critical that law enforcement has that information about a loved one if they are an active wanderer eloper. But and calling and giving that information is great. But I will tell you, in my career, we found way more kids or even adults that had eloped that hadn't even been called into us yet. So now we're locating an individual who may be nonverbal, who can't identify themselves, and now we're trying to reunite them with a family, and we don't have the resources available to do that. So consider identifications. There is a program with Medical Alert called LEAP. It's Law Enforcement Agency Portal. Some agencies have bought into that. My agency in Addison, we did do that. Both of my boys were enrolled in our program, but they will issue out ID bracelets and shoe tags that can be placed on at no cost. It was grant funded by the Autism Society of America and the Alzheimer's Association of America. They get it at no cost. And what it would happen is if a first responder located this individual, they could call Medical Alert and say, we have this individual with a serial number. Who is this? And they could reunite them. And actually, Medical Alert could call the loved one directly with that information. Autism information cards, this was a thing we started to provide out as well. How do we disclose the disability without disclosing we have a disability? Those are cards that we issued out to our families and just said, here's my name, address, loved ones, here's my disability, here's some of my triggers, here's some of my coping strategies, things like that. So as they prevent an identification, they're presenting this card as well. We had a situation where we had, in my jurisdiction, we had a fight in a local park. A young man walked away from the fight. Two of the officers thought he was involved with it, stopped him. He actually provided this card, and it changed their strategy and their tactics of how they interacted with him significantly because he had this card. And they're like, he's not involved. It's his disability. And that's why he's walking away. Private facility programs or special needs registries. This is another area that's very, very important. In the state of Illinois, law enforcement agencies are mandated to have a premise or special needs registry. It can be hosted through their department or their dispatch center is really what's critical. And the premise of the program is you're registering your loved one with that dispatch center. So what would happen is if you call 911 and you put in the address or that person's name, an alert would pop up that they have a disability, a mental health disorder, whatever it might be, and that information is shared with law enforcement before they arrive on scene. Again, knowledge is power, and the more first responders have going into that, we know how to handle that situation a little bit better, which is wonderful. But taking that premise program a step further is how does the department utilize that information on call for service? And that was one of the issues that we had in my agency is like we had a premise program and it's great, but now if we find a 13-year-old boy who is in his underwear in one of our local grocery stores and he's nonverbal, how are we identifying him? Because we had that exact same scenario in my jurisdiction. And we had registered him in a premise program, but our officers had access to our special needs registry through an app. And they were able to identify him through his photograph and call his mom to respond to the scene. He hadn't even been reported missing, but yet we were able to get him reunited very, very quickly. And Evan and I were just talking before we come down, is there is a push to do a national registry. There's an organization that's trying to do that. The national registry is set to go online January 15th. And I'm learning more about this as it comes online. So I'd love to learn more information. I'm going to get that information or understand more about how it's going to work. I will happily share that information. Many counties throughout the state of Illinois have a Smart 911, which is basically a premise program, but countywide. So you can enter your vehicles, your cell phone numbers, things like that. And the 911 systems are integrated across the counties now. You can do that. One of the other things I always tell families is do not put your loved one's name on the outside of their clothing. A prime example is my son, Andrew. If you said, hey, Andrew, I'm going to give you a ride home, he'd be like, well, you must know me. Okay, I'll get in the car. It's very easy for someone who is looking to have some ill will to utilize that information and kind of manipulate that individual if possible. You can put it on the inside of their backpacks and things like that, but definitely don't do it on the outside of their backpack. It's just a safety precaution. Okay. Um, we're not going to be able to hear this either, but this is a video that we're just talking about our special needs registry that we're running in Addison. I was interviewed by CBS 2 News up in Chicago about how we were utilizing our premise alert program within our jurisdiction. Again, just what we talked about is utilizing it on an app, how we can do that. But our premise alert program, we took a lot further than most. We had favorite places, favorite things, coping strategies, triggers, all information that our officers had to help work through and de-escalate these situations, which was very beneficial to our officers and our families as well. Okay. Other resources for families, the special needs registry we talked about, but a 911 script is another thing that we offered as well. And basically what it was, and I know in my wanting an elopement event, and we had a couple other incidents with our son, is when my wife called 911, I wasn't even sure if she remembered her own name, let alone getting information from giving vital information to the dispatcher. So what we did is we created a 911 script. So it's pre-filled out. So you're just reading off of this script with the pertinent information that I know law enforcement or a dispatcher is going to ask. It was a great resource that we had that we put out to our families. Another thing we offered out to our families was a neighborhood letter. Some families were really supportive of this, others were not, and I understand that on both sides of that fence. But um, multiple eyes watching out for your loved one is critical as well. So if you have that close with your neighbors, having those neighbors say, listen, I have a loved one with a disability. If they're out unattended, you need to call me first and then 911 next. And it's just sharing that information in your neighborhood of who you are and what your loved one's disability may or may not be. Again, those autism identifiers, whether they're ID bracelets or different things, are critical because we want to know that. A resource that we offered our families was a window cling that they could put on their cars or their house. So when we arrived on scene as first responders, we knew immediately that we had a loved one or they had a loved one with somebody with a special need in that house or disability. And again, changing our tactics in that. And then creating safety plans, especially if there's an incident with a first responder. It's really critical that you create a safety plan with that first responding agency. In my town where I worked, if we had a wanted elopement event, I met with those families individually after the event. I wanted to know what triggered that event, what are their favorite places, favorite things, understand it, and creating a safety plan to put it in place. Whether we offer that family door chimes or additional door locks or window clings or the scripts or anything that we had as a resource from the police department, we would offer that family. So creating those safety plans is very, very critical. I know in one instance, we had a young man named Danny. Danny was 13 years old at the time. He was a very active wanderer one summer, and he would take off any chance he got an opportunity. He was out the door. This was back in 2000, maybe 17, 18. I will tell you, we called Ring doorbells as a department and said, listen, this is the situation that we have. And Ring Doorbell was wonderful with us and said, we'll send you out a Ring Doorbell, door chimes at no cost. They donated to the family. We were able to present that family with that. I tried it with a second family just before I retired in 2021, and Ring said they no longer do that. I don't know why. I do know why. Amazon bought them and they weren't as cooperative as they used to be. But I called the same individual I dealt with a few years prior, and it was great with us. And he said we just don't do that anymore. So, but there are a lot of different things out there. There's a lot of grant money out there. We're going to talk more about that in a second. Special needs events is the other thing that we will talk about. And I think this is a very critical component, and where we can advocate as parents as well. So that letter I read to you when we first started from the concerned parent, his name was Sean. Sean ran an adaptive soccer program in my town called Chicago Top Soccer. And it was designed for kids with disabilities. They play the game of soccer, right? We make accommodations so that everybody can play. That's the whole philosophy of it. So when I responded to an email, I talked to Sean and I said, I told him my background. He's like, I have this group. I would love for you to come and present to our parents. Are you able to come out? I'm like, absolutely. I came out, presented with the families, um, met with Sean and fell in love with the program. I called Sean a week later and it said, I'm enrolling my sons and I'm coming to coach with you. And that was about 8 years ago. Sean has since stepped away from this program, and I have now taken over this program. And now I'm now running Chicago Top Soccer in the jurisdiction that I used to work in. But our first year we did it, we had a first responders game. And really what it was done to is to have a special needs event, right? We wanted our families to feel comfortable with our first responders, our police and fire. But what we also did is we wanted our officers and our firefighters to feel comfortable working with a wide variety of disabilities. And I have about 30 some odd kids that are in my program, and I have every disability you can think of under the sun is one of my kids has it or did have it at some point as they've aged out of the group a little bit. So it gives them a chance to be interact with a lot of different disabilities and looking past the disability and just seeing that they're just kids that want to have fun. It's a great event. We usually had a big touch a truck event where it's afterwards, where our fire department, police department would bring our cars out. We make it a big day out of it. This has taken on some legs here. I teach for the police academy up here in Northern Illinois. I teach the interacting with people with disabilities portion of that, and they have to do a practical or a hands-on scenario. So I actually have every academy class come out and partner with my kids in the spring. Well, it depends on when the class runs, but I have a class scheduled for the spring, and I've already got their day locked in for spring to work with my kids in that first responder game. So we do this every single year, and it's just a way to be able to have these events. There's a wonderful not-for-profit up where I'm at called the Autism Hero Project. They are huge supporters of law enforcement, and they are trying to build out these special needs events. They do an event with the Elgin Police Department right now called Heroes Unite, and every year they do a huge autism awareness event in the police department with Elgin. There are a few departments that are starting to do this. Peoria Police Department is in talks of right now to working with the Autism Hero Project to run a first responder event. Hopefully in April is what they're looking for, according to the chief. But he's originally from the Elgin Police Department, retired from there. He's now the chief in Peoria, and Peoria is actually in the works of planning their event. So having your agency, your first responder agencies partnered up to host a special needs event is a wonderful way to kind of build that relationship as well. Some of the things that my department did as well is for Autism Awareness Month, we did autism awareness patches on our uniforms. We wanted our community to understand that we were supportive of their loved ones' disabilities. And we actually used it as a fundraiser. I think I sold 400 patches, autism patches in the month of April when we did it. And I sold them in about 48 hours. And we took all that money and rolled it back into Special Olympics to do that as well. So there's different ways organizations and departments can get involved. But again, we have to advocate as parents. We have to be that advocate and go to our agencies like, we want to do this. We want to host it. Some departments will take that initiative. Others will not. It just depends. But as advocates, as parents, we can push them to be able to do those things. Okay. Some of the resources that we talked about, Abilities Workshop is a great resource. They're down in Florida. Tons of resources on there as well. Elevate Us Training, as we talked about that sexual education component. Kate McLaughlin is the founder and CEO of Elevate Us Training. And she has tons of resources on there for how to teach about sexual education for our loved ones with disabilities. I read that this website has changed a little bit, but if you're looking for legal, I don't want to say advice, but resources, if for some unfortunate fact our loved ones get too involved in the legal system, this is what their background is. They're looking to assist those families. There are a couple good attorneys across the country that are doing this, but this is a great organization. They do have a local chapter here in Illinois. It's up in more in Lake County, so closer to the Wisconsin border, but they are very, very resourceful. The lady involved with our chapter here in Illinois had a son that was arrested and charged with possession of child pornography, and he is a child sex offender and have forced to register, even though he has a pretty severe intellectual and developmental disability, but he was still forced to be able to register as a child sex offender, which was really not the case. It was really more of a manifestation of his disability. But and then Angel Sense's website, if you're looking for that tracking component of it, I've worked with a lot of different tracking softwares through my years, whether it's Project Lifesaver, GeoFence, a few other ones. LoJack had one, but Angel Sense has been tremendous supporter of families, but also a tremendous supporter of law enforcement as well. And they're working collaboratively with Angel Sense. And it sounds like, just talking before we started today, that Angel Sense is actually pretty common down in Southern Illinois. It is not in Northern Illinois, I will tell you that right now. So kudos to those agencies that are already utilizing Angel Sense now. It is a tremendous, tremendous resource. Again, my son has an anal sense device, so I wouldn't be pushing out items that I wouldn't use with my own two boys. So just some great resources that are available to you at no cost. Right? Closure for our law enforcement officers, you can enhance the safety of that the public, but we have to advocate as parents as well. We want our first responder agencies to recognize the behaviors, signs, and characteristics of autism, practice tolerance, patience, and utilize those communication skills. But we have to share what those resources are, and then follow procedures. But again, if agencies don't know your loved one has that disability, it's critical that we are that advocate and share that with those first responder agencies. Okay. Questions, my email address, this is on there. That is my website. You can happily go on. I do have some resources on there that are downloadable that you can download for so some social stories, our premise alert program, things like that, or different resources that are on my website that you can download at no cost. But if you're looking for something else, please feel free to email me. If I don't have that resource, I can definitely find it for you. Another area that I'm starting to work with a little bit is in hospitals. I've done some public safety training for public hospitals, so Endeavor Health, which is 10 hospitals up in the northern part of the state. I trained all of their public safety personnel, all 180 something officers last year in the spring. So it's just, but getting this information out, but be your advocate. If you ever run into a little bit of static or problematic with your first responder agencies, please let me know. I am more than happy to advocate on behalf of you as a parent as well. I'm coming from the same perspective. But again, that law went into effect starting to disclose January 1 with every law enforcement agency officer in the state of Illinois has to have training relating to autism. I believe it's every 2 years they're gonna have to do this. So
Okay.
huge
At this,
monumental store forward.
yeah.
So
At this time, I'll stop the recording and we'll take some questions.